All right. Welcome to Bradley J's first StreamYard video. And I have a guest that's going to join me here in a few minutes. A guest of mine who I know very well because he's my first cousin. My mom and his dad, brother and sister. So we really didn't grow up together, but we were at a lot of family functions because my guest, whose name is Shane Sigle, grew up in Colorado. So it was always a lot of fun going out to Colorado and doing adventurous things and hiking the mountains and things like that. And now Shane, of course, he's growing up. He's a man now, and Shane got to do something that I think is so cool. He did the world's toughest race, the Eco Challenge Fiji. So let me bring on Shane from Team Endure. How are you, man?
Doing great tonight, Bradley J. Thanks for having me on.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to have you on. The funny thing I was telling people before I brought you on, we're first cousins, mom and dad, brother and sister. You grew up in Colorado. I grew up in Kansas. The cool thing was I always enjoyed going to Colorado with my family because it was always a good time, even though we're a few years apart in age, right?
Not too many, though.
Not too many, but it was always fun because we got to go up in the mountains. You guys took us to different places, and it was always kind of like an adventure. And you did an adventure, the world's toughest race, the Eco Challenge Fiji. But before we get into that, I want to give a little background to people who are joining us. One, at what age did you decide to be an adventurer? That's what we call you in my family. You're an adventurer. How did you get started doing things that involve like things that you do in the Eco Challenge, like being on the water, being in like the forest, and just hiking and going? How'd that all start?
Yeah, so as you said, Brad, I grew up in the mountains of Colorado. I grew up over 7,000 feet. The home I lived in was over 7,000 feet in the mountains, and everywhere behind and around our homes were wilderness back then, and really adventurous mountainous wilderness. And I grew up hunting, fishing, hiking, all those adventure sports that some people yearn for and some people are terrified of in the mountains of Colorado. So the short answer is I've been doing it all my life.
And it is so funny because we talk about that, about you and what you do. But we had our what we call our first cousins weekend out at Lake Wilson this past July, and your sister Trish and her husband Steve stopped by for a night. And so I'm talking about how I kind of flubbed up the first time we did this interview. I didn't hit go live, and my everyone was giving me a hard time, and I almost cried because it didn't work. I felt bad for you, but this time it's working, it's going. But we sat down. I'm sitting down and I'm talking to your sister Trish, who's your older sister, by the way. We do have to mention she's older because I always like to give my sister a hard time about being older than I am. But I was talking to her, and I said, "How cool is it that Shane does these things? Like you've done more than one, but how cool is it, Trish, that he's doing the toughest race, the Eco Challenge Fiji?" And she's like, "Nah, that's just Shane." That because when we look at it, it's so amazing what you do, and you've done other races before. What was the first race you did when it came to the Eco Challenge, or was it an Eco Challenge?
Yeah, it was really similar to the Eco Challenge. So the Eco Challenge is an adventure race, commonly known as an adventure race, which is a race that's usually four people on a team. The team has to be co-ed. Everybody has to travel together. So you're only as fast as your slowest person. And it's over long distances. And it includes multiple disciplines. So as you were saying, running, trail running, mountain biking, canoeing, whitewater rafting. We've done some crazy things like ride camels through the desert. In the Eco Challenge Fiji, they've got some trailers out, and we were on these things called Billy rafts, which are basically a bunch of bamboo trees that are tied together. And we have a piece of bamboo in our hands, and that's all we use to paddle ourselves down these rivers. And these races go on for days. And so the very first one I did, we had to stay up all night. And we thought this was a huge deal. Wow, we're going to race. The race started in the middle of the day, and the first one to get to the finish line, which was like 170 miles long, won the race. And so all night long, we were traveling through, this was in West Virginia. We're traveling through the mountains of West Virginia, kayaking down the rivers in West Virginia. and we thought it was the biggest deal that we stayed up all night and nobody went to bed. So that's where it all started for me. That was kind of the baby start compared to something like the Eco Challenge, which was 672 kilometers long, the fastest team in the world that finished that race. Well, you have to tune in to see how long it took them, but it was a long time. And let's just say we were out in the jungles and the rivers and the oceans of Fiji for a long time.
And of course, Shane is talking about the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. 10 episodes, August 14th on Amazon.
Amazon Prime. I'll get it out, man. And it's just crazy. I saw one of the trailers that you were talking about, and it was like, I think the third trailer that came out, and you had sent out like, hey, you do see you helping along one of your teammates, which they show the whole thing, and it's just like, wow, this is incredible. Let's talk about Fiji, though. So you get to go to Fiji, which most people want to go to on vacation. You go to race over 600 kilometers in the world's toughest race. What was it like being in Fiji? Did you, of course you're doing the race, but before you started the race, did you get to like go around and check things out, or did you just have to focus on the race?
Yeah, so for better or for worse, this is the second time that I have done a race in Fiji, an expedition length race. So the short story is I know the jungles of Fiji and the oceans of Fiji pretty well at this stage. And before and after the races, we're there for at least a month. So before and after the races, we get to adventure around and spend times on the beaches and go diving and snorkeling and do, all those other fun adventure sports that we're not actually doing in the race. But Fiji itself, for some other TV adventure buffs, is where they also film the Survivor Series, which is produced by Mark Burnett and Lisa Hennessy. And that was kind of the segue for them to create the Eco Challenge there. So this is also produced by Mark Burnett and Lisa Hennessy. And so they know the islands well. They know how to get everything organized and get all the logistics done. But Fiji itself is a series of, I think it's 332 islands. And none of the islands are bigger than, let's say, maybe half or a quarter of the state of Kansas. So pretty small islands in general. And so it's a real island culture. The Fijian people are some of the nicest, kindest, most giving people I have met on the planet. And luckily, in all my years of adventure racing, I've been all over the planet. But the Fijian people are just amazing. So what a place to vacation.
Yes, you call it a vacation. I call it hard work. So you're the host of the show, though, as a guy everybody knows. Did you get to meet Bear? It's Bear Grylls or Griles? How do you say that?
His name is Bear Grylls, and for some of you other TV buffs, Mr. Grylls does Man vs. Wild, and I think it's called Into the Wild also. This guy is an ex-special British Special Forces guy that he jumps out of a helicopter sometimes. They drop him in the middle of nowhere, and then he has to find his way back on his own, and all he really has is a backpack. So the guy he's also a true adventurer.
He sounds like a true adventurer, just like yourself, man. You can now lump yourself in that category as one. So it's the beginning of the race, of the world's toughest race, the Eco Challenge Fiji. How do you get ready mentally and physically for a race like this?
Well, the physical part is honestly probably the easy part. You need to train about 2 hours a day, focusing on aerobic heart rate conditioning, kind of the boring endurance athlete stuff, runners, cyclists, all the training's the same. But the mental side of it is a really tough part because you're going to suffer and you're going to be wet, you're going to be cold, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be lost, and you're going to be with 3 other people in the middle of nowhere, and you got to all figure it out. You can't fight. That doesn't do you any good. You're going to freeze to death, so you just know that's coming. You're going to be hungry. You're going to run out of food, so you know that's coming. And it's really a test of the human spirit. And I think that's what the show really highlights is there's everything in this show, which you've seen in the trailers, from these teams that are just blistering fast moving across the countryside to teams that literally have their teammates on their back and they're taking one step at a time for 670 kilometers.
Wow, man. So when it comes to, so you start, what's the first thing that you do? Like, is it hiking? Running? Do you just take off running? And then where does it go from there? How do the disciplines start to fall into place as you're going along on the race?
Well, they've shown a little bit of this in the trailer, so I don't mind talking about it. But the race started in a traditional Fijian sailing outrigger boat. So any people that are familiar with outrigger canoeing, it's basically a smaller canoe that has an ama on it, and ama is basically a balance that comes off the side, but it also has a sail. So we started in these boats, and there were 60 teams from about 30, I think it was 32 countries that were in the race, and they basically blew a big conch shell and off everybody went. I mean, boats were flipping over, boats were running into each other, putting holes in each other. It was complete mayhem. And these people realize that they're going 700 kilometers, and in the first 5 minutes, they've already got a hole in their boat.
So
So
it's more
pretty
like
amazing.
it's just like be patient, really. I mean, go quick, but be patient about it to get out there because you have so long
Yeah,
to a team.
the best guys in the world, they're saying for adventure racing is that you start slow and then you taper from there.
Yeah, see, look at that. Wise words, man. Wise words. So let's talk a little bit about your team. A team Endure, and people watching the show, they can actually hashtag. You guys have hashtag Team Endure. So I'm guessing like somebody's watching that and is responding on Twitter or Facebook or social media. And talk a little bit about your teammates. You said there has to be one female competitor, and then you have two other guys or girls, and then you. Talk a little bit about your team and what they all bring to Team Endure.
Yeah, so our team, I was lucky to be on an amazing team, but we had a really unique twist to what we brought, and you can see some of this in the trailers if you watch them. But we had a gentleman with Alzheimer's on our team, and I think his age was 63 years old, and he had been in every one of the eco challenges that had ever happened. There's only two other people that can say that. And the first eco challenge happened over 20 years ago, and they've been having these races all over the planet. And it is basically the gold standard for endurance and toughness racing. So, anyways, this guy has done all 20 of these races. His name is Mark Macy, and he's also been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So we took him out on that course with Alzheimer's, and the show really highlights, the trials and tribulations that we had out there in the jungle.
How much of an inspiration was he to the rest of your team?
I almost start tearing up when I talk about him. So the short story is the guy's amazing, and I think he's an inspiration for everybody that was in the race. And I think you'll see that come out once the episodes show.
And what about your other two teammates? Who are they?
So lucky enough to race with a gentleman named Travis Macy, who's also a professional endurance racer. He has won this race called the Leadman competition, which is high up in the mountains of Colorado. And they basically run a 100-mile run, a 100-mile mountain bicycle, a marathon, a 10K run, all of those in 3 weeks, and they add up their time to see who wins. So it's this amazing long-term endurance run way up in the high mountains of Colorado. And then the lady that we race with, her name is Danelle Ballingy, and Danelle is a multi-time world champion in adventure racing. So I was lucky to race with some pretty high-level people.
So what is each person? Does each person on the team have like a speciality that they're good at, like riding a bike or pulling, or good with the water or navigation, or is that just something you all have to know?
Everybody has to do everything together, so that's important. But everybody on our team had a job. So even though Mace has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and he's dealing with that, he brought an amazing amount of experience. And when you're stuck out in the middle of the ocean and you break a couple kayak paddles and you're trying to figure out what to do, somebody with that amount of experience, 25 years of this experience is invaluable. So he brought that to the team. Travis brought amazing fitness to our team and a lot of leadership. And Danelle, with her world champion status, she's done probably 30 races of this style. So once again, brought amazing just toughness and experience. And frankly, I think they brought me along to be the mule. So every team really has someone that just kind of carries all the gear, and their job is just to keep up. And I think that's my job.
Well, in one of the trailers, we actually see you helping out one of your teammates, but in the water, and they had their arm around you. So you're doing your job.
I was doing my job. I spent a lot of time just trying to be a great teammate and help out where it was needed.
Because you actually are pretty good in the water. I've seen it out at the lake on a paddleboard where you just stood up on the thing and started going around, and then our cousin Brenda was on it, and she was on it for about, I don't know, minute, and then it was like right over, and it was like, how do you do this? But you're very good in the water though, so I'm guessing a little bit of expertise comes in handy to a race like this for you in the water.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I got into these races mostly because of my water skill. I paddled on the U.S. canoe and kayak team and the U.S. whitewater rafting team. So being on whitewater and out in the ocean and in challenging waters is really my specialty.
So what happens if a teammate can't go on anymore? Like they're just it's done. Are you done for the race then?
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to quit, and that happens. It's pretty common in these big races, and it's really common for people to have feet problems. The problem is when you have a pair of shoes on and your feet are wet for days on end, the layers of your skin start delaminating, and literally the pain is unbearable, and people cannot stand on their feet any longer, and they have to quit.
Wow. Have you ever had to quit a race?
I have not quit a race myself. I have not been the catalyst that made us quit a race. But that being said, I have been on multiple teams and multiple races where we had to quit.
And because it's a tough race, man. That's why they call it the world's toughest race. And you were talking about all the things you do in the water. You're hiking, you're biking, you're carrying people, but you have no navigation to help you out, right? Do you have a compass or not?
Okay, so the other part of this is, as you know, nowadays there's amazing technology for navigation. Everybody has a GPS. There's satellite tracking systems. Wherever you go, all you need is a little machine that you type in where you're going, and it'll tell you where you're going, just like our iPhones, right? We've got the simple concept of that. In these races, all you have is a map and a compass. So they don't allow the use of GPS. So you're using old military maps, you're using old topographical maps, you're using nautical maps when you're out in the ocean. So having someone on your team that's a good navigator is absolutely imperative. And frankly, some of the best navigators in the world are adventure racers.
Yeah, I guess you would have to be. So let's say a team member can't go on anymore. How do they get you out? What do you do? Is there somebody? Can you talk to one of the cameramen or camera person who's there? What happens when somebody's down and out and they can't go on any further? How do they get you
Well,
out?
yeah, the first thing you do is these races are so long that you can literally stop and put somebody in a space blanket, which is basically a giant piece of aluminum foil. You put them in a space blanket and let them take a nap. You let them sleep for 2 or 3 hours. The top teams will only sleep maybe 1 to 2 hours a day, and they'll do
Wow.
that for 6, 8, 9 days in a row. So by the time they finish these races, they're just zombies. The lower teams will stop and sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. But if usually most of the ailments that people have can be fixed by stopping and sleeping for 4 to 6 hours. So first thing you do is just stop and let the person rest. Sometimes that's not possible. You're wet, you're cold, you're hungry. Hypothermia is an issue. So luckily in the Eco Challenge, good old Bear Grylls was there, and he was commonly up in a helicopter, and he just might come get you if you had some problems. I think if you watch some of the trailers, you'll see old Bear looking down on some teams and figuring out how to get them out of some really sticky, nasty situations.
And we'll post a trailer on our Facebook page so people can get a look at what you guys and girls, men and women, endure doing the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. 10 episodes, August 14th, Amazon Prime is where you can catch it. And I'm talking to Shane Sigle, Team Endure. You've done many of these. Let me ask you just some random questions. Where's the coolest place that you've ever did one of these races?
I was lucky enough to race north of the Arctic Circle in northern Norway and Sweden. And we spent a lot of time racing up in the fjords, which are basically these giant fingers that go out into the Arctic Ocean up there. There's floating icebergs out there. There is crystal blue water. During the evenings, you'll see the northern lights, which are basically these electric lights that shine in the northern sky of the planet. And pretty amazing place up there. And we would travel for a day and a half, and see no signs of human beings. I mean, no trails, no trash, no roads, no nothing, just pure tundra in the middle of nowhere.
And that's the coolest place you've been.
Well,
And
there's been a
actually,
lot of ones, but
that's the one that sticks out in your mind. It's definitely the coldest one you've ever been on, I'm guessing.
pretty chilly up there.
I like how you say chilly. Like, to me, it's just, I've been goose hunting with your dad and my dad. That's cold, and it's probably colder. And you're like, it's a chill. Yeah, being your first cousin, it is amazing. When I tell people, I'm like, yeah, I have a cousin that did the Eco Challenge, and a lot of people like, what's the Eco Challenge? What is that? And it's hard to explain because I've never done it. I've just seen it. I'm like, oh, it's this long race, and they bike and they go, and they're like, they kind of look at me like, the question is, why? So why do you do these races? I mean, yeah, I know like everything, the endurance, just to accomplish a feat like that. But why do you do these things?
Well, like you said, one part of it is adventure. So there's this amazing ability to go see some of the most remote parts of the planet. And they host these races in those places. So that's the other part. The other part is I'm a firm believer that everybody should wake up every day and challenge himself. And they don't necessarily have to go out and run a marathon or something that I would enjoy. But in some way, you need to challenge yourself. And frankly, for me, enjoying the mountains and the rivers and doing those physical activities are what challenge me. And so it's just been a passion throughout my life. And as you can see, it's grown into maybe an obsession at this point.
I can tell you, I am challenging myself. I got a bike, um, and Jamie Meeks, our cousin, he rides bikes, and so I thought, you know what? As I'm getting older, I need to get exercise, and I have an elliptical at home. But I was doing that, and then all of a sudden, I was like, you know what? I'm going to ride this bike, and so I go around Lake Shawnee, and I did. It's a 6 mile loop. So I did it once, and I've done it twice a couple times. And I set my goal up for by the end of the summer is to do that 3 times, which is a little over 21 miles. So that's my challenge to myself. So I'm kind of living in your motto that you're doing. I'm trying to challenge myself every day just to get out there on the bike and exercise. So I'm doing that. So let me ask you another question. This is kind of going to put you on the spot question. Okay. So you're doing, let's just say, like a milder version of the Eco Challenge, and you have first cousins. Okay. You know who they all are. All right. So you get 3 members on your team, and you have to pick 3. You can't chicken out and say, I would want this or that. So you get 3, you get 2 more. You can have girls or guys, doesn't matter. Who is your first choice out of our first cousins to be on your team?
So what I didn't tell you is that you get really sleepy during these races, especially in the middle of the night from about 1 o'clock until about 4 o'clock during the night. All you have on is this little headlamp on your head, and you get really sleepy. And all you wish for is somebody to tell you a bad joke. And I would bring you, Cousin Brad, because I know you could tell me some of the worst jokes and you would keep me awake all night.
That's true. Okay, now who's the second person you'd take?
Well, we probably have to take one of our Meeks cousins, right? We got 2 Meeks cousins, and those guys are tough, both Jamie and Jerry. So
Yeah.
let's bring one of those guys.
Okay, and who's the now you have to pick one of the women from the first cousins. Which woman would you pick from our first cousins?
Well, I like to eat a lot, and I'm trying to think. Probably your sister Tony, who would cook for me when we were little kids, because she's the oldest cousin. We got to bring Tony because let me tell you, out there, we probably burn 10,000 calories every 6 to 8 hours. I mean, your physical output is absolutely amazing. So I need some good food.
All right, so we would be out of this race very quickly, by the way, because you took Tony and I, which Tony's riding a bike as well too, though. So who knows? Maybe we'd last a little longer than we should on that race. But it's an amazing thing that you do. Like, seriously, I always tell people, I'm like, man, my cousin Shane, Trish, and Gavin. Gavin is your younger brother. But I'm like, they have such a cool family because you have Trish, who's a lawyer, you have Gavin, who's a doctor, and then you have Shane, who's an adventurer. Like, who doesn't want that in their family? I look at my family, and my sister does finances. I'm a DJ, and my other sister does daycare, which are all very important. But your family, I just say it's like amazing, and I know them as well. They're my first cousins, so I think that's pretty cool what you guys do. Hey, I want to ask you, how is your son Sawyer? Does he take after anything that you do?
Well, for better or for worse, my boy is a spitting image of me, and he's all about adventure. And I'm trying to raise him in that environment and teach him how to do all the things that I do. But I'm starting him young, and we do it really safely. And I don't. A lot of people jump into some of these sports and they get hurt because they get in way over their head too soon. They're all doable by anybody at any level. You just like you said, you ride your bike around the lake. Would you stand up and say anybody else can't ride their bike around the lake? Of course not. You just
No.
got to start slow, take it easy, and it's good for everybody. But I'll tell you what, when I see my 7-year-old out kayaking Whitewater Rapids or riding his mountain bike in the mountains of Colorado, it fills my soul.
I would do have to say this. Shane let me talk to his boy Sawyer before we went live on the StreamYard video, and I asked him if he follows in his dad's footsteps, and he said, "Yeah, I kayak." And so I asked him. I said, "So when I come out, or if I come out and win or make it out there, I go, will you teach me and take me out to kayak?" And he thought about it for a second, and then he goes, "No, I'm probably better than you are." And I said, yes, you are better than I am. So that's why I need somebody to teach me. Well, it is the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji, 10 episodes, August 14th, Amazon Prime. I know a lot of our family is going to be watching this because we support you in everything that you do. It's amazing. You're an inspiration to our family as well. See, I tear up too, like talking about that. But you are, man. When we watch you and we see the things that you do, it's amazing, and being a great father that you are as well, just an inspiration to our family, and we're so proud of you doing that. Shane Sigle from Team Endure, again, world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji, 10 episode, August 14th, Amazon Prime. Hopefully, we gave people kind of an inside look into what to expect, and maybe hopefully we got you some more fans, and when people watch that, man, at least they'll have a connection to follow along, man. It's amazing what you do. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this StreamYard video at work, man.
Love it. Well, two things, Brad. If you got any questions once the show is aired, give me a call. Love to circle around with you on this. And then, second of all, lots of love to you and everybody else in the Sigle family, right?
Yes, definitely. You and Sawyer, you guys stay safe. We're going to be rooting you on, and hopefully we can watch you cross the finish line. What? How many teams is there? Over 60 teams.
60 teams from over 30 countries in this race this year, and all different walks of life. That's what's pretty amazing is the featured teams that you'll see on there. These aren't just your standard triathletes. I mean, there's people from all walks of life. I think you saw a couple ladies that came from India, a couple twin sisters, and they've hiked the 7 summits, the 7 highest summits on the planet. You saw us with our Alzheimer's teammate. You saw a team from New Zealand that's super experienced. So all the different teams have their own little twists, and I think that's what's going to make the show great.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it, and I know a lot of our family is. Again, you and Sawyer, you guys stay safe. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to me about the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. Shane Sigle, Team Endure. I'm gonna be rooting you guys on. Who's ever close by is probably gonna be hearing me saying, "Go, go!" And again, Shane, thank you so much, man. And yeah, I will definitely follow along, and we can touch base again and talk about some of the episodes if that's cool with you.
That sounds great, Brad. Thanks for the time tonight.
You bet, man. Thank you, Shane. Shane Sigle joining me, Bradley J, to talk about the world's toughest race, the Eco Challenge Fiji. Again, 10 episodes, August 14th, Amazon Prime. Check it out, man. I am so seriously when I say it, like, he's just an inspiration, man. When you talk to him, he's down to earth, and he just does amazing things, especially with these adventure races. So again, thanks to Shane Sigle. On my next StreamYard video, we'll be talking to Shane, but I've also got another guest that I want to bring on. He's a musician. He's a friend of mine. He was in Nashville, though I believe he has moved somewhere else, but his name is Jared Wagner, and I want to talk to Jared. He's a musician, and I want you guys to hear some of his music. So stay tuned. Sometime in the future, Jared Wagner, a friend of mine, a musician, I'll have him on my next StreamYard video. I'm Bradley J, and I'm just saying, that's it.